Hey everybody, time for another game theory video. If you like the videos, like, sub, silly comment, share, support the channel if you can. I appreciate it. Thanks. This might be a good video to support the channel because we got 25 years of doing stuff that no one else has done in fighting games, right? So if you want to support me on Patreon, PayPal, something like that, I appreciate it. But I got asked recently something along the lines of, what is the hardest combo you have ever done in fighting games? What game has the hardest combos, right? What was the hardest thing to come up with in fighting games, right? And I've said this before, there's a big difference between just executing a combo and quotation marks labbing the combo, right? Imagine if someone were to draw you a picture, right? And they also give you the color scheme of the picture, right? Now, all you have to do is color into the lines, so to speak. You didn't actually lay the foundation of what you're doing, right? Just like I've used that quote before, there's something said along the lines of, talent hits the target that no one else could hit, but true genius hits the target that nobody else knew was there. There's a big difference between also being able to execute something and actually being able to find something, right? Also, when I get into this, some things are sort of a trick to do. If we were to, I have an image of, although I have Kill there for King of Fighters. King of Fighters say K. K had that weird cancel, which I don't even remember how you do. It's been so long. K had that weird cancel with his Dragon Punch into Fireball, I think it was, right? But if you just did the motion, it didn't work. You had to do some kind of weird motion that I don't even remember how you do it anymore. Just like, say, some of those Marvel 3 videos that I've made with all the crazy Super Hurricane Kick stuff, right? You couldn't just do Dragon Punch to Hurricane Kick Super. It was a specific motion to allow you to do that. So some things perhaps at first glance are hard, but they just have sort of a knack or a trick to do them, right? Games specifically that I'm not going to talk about too much, but of course I've done many videos, not many, but quite a few videos on Soul Calibur, not just, Kulik stuff and different games, but I don't remember anything being that hard with Kulik, even though they were supposedly just frame things, right? Just like I did stuff with, it was the Taki clone, which they ended up patching out of Soul Calibur 4, or was that 5? I don't even remember, right? Mortal Kombat, I said before, Small World, I got recognized by, his name is Aaron Davis, I believe. He saw me in public and he's like, I work for NetherWhelms. He's like, your Final Showdown, right? And he's like, dude, we all saw your Johnny Cage videos. And he's like, I actually use that now. It's like, that blew my mind, right? So that was a very weird thing. Like I said, he actually works for NetherRealms, and there's other kind of poverty games I've done, but nothing in those really stick out as hard to me or as perhaps long-lasting, maybe you could say. But let's get into something like Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter 2 is a good example of, and Street Fighter series is, some stuff is just kind of a trick to do. Nothing really sticks out as hard for me to do specifically in Street Fighter 2. At least that I've come up with, you could say, but a lot of stuff in Street Fighter 2 is, say, Super Fireball, low forward Super Fireball. That would be an example of a trick, like, if you were to think about that from a new player's perspective, and that's not that I found that, but just, giving an example of how some things are a trick to do. So low forward and super turbo, you would do the fireball motion, then you would do duck forward, then a fireball, right? Stuff like that is a trick. Some of the stuff is also just, you need a good apparatus to do, even some sort of things like simple stuff like, say the chain combo stuff in Street Fighter 2 where you got to do little punch, little kick, tap at the same time, then a hard punch, whatever, right? That personally for me, in my old age now that I play on a pad, that would be difficult for me to do. So some things are also sort of, your apparatus might cause some difficulty. But if we get into, let's go into some examples of maybe stuff that I'm known for. Say the Kim Infinite, which I saw recently that, which is funny because he's supposedly a knowledgeable guy about fighting games. The Kyokujin guy, he's trying to say that it's bullshit that I did the Kim Infinite. And it was just, I've said before, the Kim Infinite, dude, you can look at the history, you can look at videos 20 plus years old, people giving credit to Final Showdown. I said before that it was the Cyrec guys that had the idea of you just keep Kim in his foot stance or his switch stance, switch stance, whatever you called it, right? Just keep him in that infinitely and he'd be able to do an infinite. And they had the original idea. And that's why I say sometimes laying the foundation for something is important, right? And then I was like, oh, well, how would you actually do that? And then I was like, wait, if you negative edge, you could do it. And then I showed myself doing it. And, you know, I then ended up they even gave me credit for it in a video before. So that was the story of the Kim Infinite. I've told that many times before. But I know, again, the CVS2 Kim videos, and well, I guess I did videos for lots of characters in the game, but that's kind of what put me on the map because nobody at the time besides the Japanese had ever done something like that. And you could even say, man, even hindsight is 2020, perhaps, that to my knowledge, a lot of the Cyrec guys, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, they actually played the game on a slower speed and they were task guys. So geez, if you put that into the equation, you could very well say that maybe my CVS2 video, you consider I put that out before I could even drive, and the stuff I was doing, and you know, I didn't put the game on slower speed and I was manually doing it. Who knows? Maybe if you think about it from that perspective, geez, maybe my video was the best video from a certain perspective when even that game came out, right? You know, but you know, that was kind of the video that got me on the map. I've said this before, because no one at the time had ever done anything remotely like that besides the Japanese, right? But was anything particularly hard in it? I don't remember comparatively to nowadays, the stuff, you know, that I've done. Probably not. Kim Infinite would be hard because I'm on pad and that's just not a good apparatus to do that sort of combo on, but nothing sticks out to me as particularly hard that I did, so to speak, comparatively to everything, right? When I think about Guilty Gear, even though Guilty Gear is a game that obviously throughout the years that obviously people have tried to recreate the stuff I've done for 20 plus years, right? Whether it be in the, older Guilty Gears all the way to newer games, you know. I still remember posting stuff for XR before I ever played it. And people were like, no, this can't work or else the Japanese would have done it. And look how XR ended up being played. Look at Strive, you know. But, you know, even though people use TAS and Macro to try to recreate a lot of the stuff that I've done in Guilty Gear, I would not say that anything particularly in Guilty Gear actually sticks out to me as the hardest combo or the hardest thing I've ever done in a video game. Despite, you know, that people, again, 20 plus years, people trying to recreate the stuff I've done and using TAS and macro shit, button binding, everything. I would say Guilty Gear is a game that has I've done a lot of hard combos in Guilty Gear, but when I think about like the hardest shit in history, no, right? And, you know, even another thing that might be a good thing about talking about mentioning is sometimes you just need to practice something to do. If someone were to ask me to do Akira's knee in Virtual Fighter right now, I would not be able to do it because I've never practiced it, right? Do you know what I mean? So that would actually be another good example of, you know, some things you actually need to practice a little bit and find a little trick to doing it, right? Just like the Kai Impossible combo, like that kind of needs a good apparatus to do. My buttons need to be able to slide very well, and I need to be able to slide my fingers at a fast sort of speed to get those impossible combos. But are like they the hardest thing that I've ever done? No. You know, when I think about Karna's Revenge, you know, I picked up that game in a couple weeks and people were already saying that I was one of the best in the world. You know, then a little bit after that, no one could beat me, you know. Nothing actually really stuck out, even though that stuff was considered just combo video stuff at the time and no one would ever do it, right? That stuff, I mean, I learned lickety split. That was not that hard to do. When I think about, say, King of Fighters there, King of Fighters, the stuff I've done in King of Fighters, you know, King of Fighters would be an example of certainly the stuff I've done in King of Fighters. I didn't do a lot of it, and certainly I've been quite surpassed by the stuff that I've done in King of Fighters. I think Persona still makes King of Fighters videos, And God, Persona is one of the only guys that I can think that is still in the game of making combo videos since I was doing it as a kid, right? Although he's mostly been known as a SNK guy, right? I think he's only slightly dabbled in other games, but certainly he's surpassed the stuff that I did when I first tried King of Fighters 13 now. But, when I first did King of Fighters 13, the videos I did were, again, people wouldn't share them because they thought I was cheating, all this kind of stuff. But certainly the stuff I've done in King of Fighters probably has not held the test of time as good as, say, Guilty Gear has. But at the time I did the King of Fighters stuff, it was pretty crazy. People didn't want to share it. It was too crazy. But I don't think anything actually sticks out to me as too hard. As a matter of fact, the stuff that I did in King of Fighters was generally so easy, it was kind of stupid, I thought. Again, the only thing that sticks out to me that was hard about King of Fighters is I remember K, for some of his cancels, you had to do some kind of weird motion to do it, which I don't even remember what it was anymore. For Marvel 3, certainly Marvel 3 are I would say Marvel 3, now we're getting into Marvel 3 is some of the hardest stuff that I ever did, I would say. Like, I definitely remember a number of those tag team combos that were very hard. And when I talk about, there's a big difference between executing something or labbing something and then executing it. Marvel 3 would be a good example of a game that I laid down so much foundation for, again, Marvel 3, there's a game we've showed before that it's 2025. People still try to recreate. People still use tasks to try to recreate ideas that I showed manually. And a lot of stuff that I came up with laying the foundation, right? And so certainly Marvel 3 has got, I remember, you think about some of those tag team combos. I had to come up with the Akuma double off the ground thing, which was not thought to be possible. No one had ever done anything like that before. No one had ever done the Akuma Infinite before. No one had ever done the Akuma Staircase before. No one had ever done this Ryu shit. No one had ever done this Strider shit. And I all had to do these all in one combo. That's a lot of trial and error to get something to work. And then once you get the idea down, then I have to execute it. And then I know this is going to blow people's brains even more. And I've showed it before. You got to remember, I did not own a PS3. When I made videos for Street Fighter 4, just like people didn't want to share the Japanese did share my Street Fighter 4 videos actually, but American audiences didn't want to share it. But when I was making videos for, Street Fighter 4 and God, I even forgot Tekken vs. Street Fighter and all this kind of shit, I did not own my own PS3. I had to borrow it, right? That is, a lot of times when I think about, man, that's crazy. That's crazy that, I technically did not own my own PS3. I had to borrow it and then in my spare time, do it, right? And those are stuff that has held the test of time. When did Marvel 3 come out? Again, I don't know, 2012 maybe, right? Dragon Ball FighterZ, when I look at that, I would say Dragon Ball FighterZ, and I know it's basically a Mugen game now, but definitely Dragon Ball FighterZ, I would say is the hardest game that I've ever done combos for in terms of, because of that aspect of having to lab so much, right? And a lot of it was, I had labbed the game in my head, so to speak, and I've talked about how to do this before when I saw the properties of the moves. But, when you think about having to lay the foundation, and I don't know how much stuff I found in Dragon Ball FighterZ, but you think about from just the basic knowledge of the game to B&Bs to the crazy wacky combo videos. Did I find like 90% of the stuff in Dragon Ball FighterZ? It's hard for me to even say. It's a lot. And again, you just think about, man, I had to lay the foundation for most of the shit that even exists in the game, that they eventually started making more and more Mugenfied for people to do. I had to lay the foundation for 90% of the game? Who knows? It's a lot, right? So I had to lay that foundation with pretty much the fundamental way the system works, what was possible with almost every single character in the game. And then I also had to execute it. Let's not even get into the physical thing. I had to do that on my fucking nerve damage throughout my body on broken controllers. That's why I say I don't think there will ever be a game where someone does as much as I have for Dragon Ball FighterZ. And it's amazing. I just think about all the stuff I've done. I can watch Dragon Ball FighterZ and just be, man, I can't believe I came up with all this shit, right? That an entire community, well, now again, a lot of the game is pretty Mugenfied, but those Tiger Knee links, some of the hardest shit I've ever done. Because again, I had to lay the foundation for it. The only thing that makes Dragon Ball FighterZ easier that perhaps I would not have been able to do if it was an old school game is, I've said before, because there was that orange bar in Dragon Ball FighterZ, I could see if an idea was potentially possible. So say maybe if I were to give up in another game, like if I try so many times and something fails, maybe I would have just given up. But Dragon Ball FighterZ, again, people don't realize how good they have it nowadays. Because there was that orange bar that showed how much the character was stunned, I knew if the idea I had was going to work or not. Does that make sense? Whereas a lot of times, if we go back to a game like Guilty Gear, do you know how I had to make sure if something worked in Guilty Gear? I would kind of scam the system. I would put the meter to infinite, and I would run into the guy and I would hit them so many times, RC, 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 and then I would start my combo, and then I would try to get the character just heavy enough that this is where they would be at the end of the combo to see if the combo still works, right? I would have to kind of cheat the system, so to speak. So then I could be like, okay, do the first part of the combo. I can kind of guesstimate how heavy the guy is. Now I'm going to RC, 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 RC. I did 10 hits, however it is. Now the guy is theoretically this heavy. Now let me test the last half of the combo. Does that make sense? That's how a lot of stuff, if we're talking about combo-wise, not just tech-wise, I had to do in old school Guilty Gear. And of course, something like, say, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 would be an example of a game that was almost pretty much no lab time whatsoever. But in terms of like sheer execution for some of the shit I did, like those hop slash micro dash stuff, that isn't that hard to do. But say, and even say the mid-screen Black Hayato stuff, right? That's not that hard to do. I don't know why people still complain about that, but of course we've seen the community try to say that, oh, it's not fake, and they made all these lies about me to get people to not watch, but that didn't take a lot of labbing to do. That didn't take a lot of finagling to get to work, right? Like, it's amazing people can't even do that with rolling on. But Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I even said when I first made those videos, it's not a game I played. I was just bored and I put it in. I'm like, I wonder if I can find something new in the game. And then I was like, oh shit, I can do the triple hop slash loops and all this other stuff. Oh, double Black Hayatos, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff, like, oh, okay, But that would be an example of, say, obviously the Sentinel Infinite, that is, I've actually never done that without, I've never done that in full to Dizzy without pausing the game. But even in that original video, and when I was doing it, what was it? Did I get I think that I showed 2 or 3 loops. I think I showed in my original video for it. But the most I've ever done manually was 4 loops, maybe it was. But I think when I had, once I tried in Fightcade with the pause feature, I think you get about 5 to 6 loops before the guy actually gets dizzy, before you actually, depending on what you try it at, before the guy gets dizzy, right? But I mean, that's insanely hard, right? But was that hard to find, to think about? No, not for me. Just even say, and then after I stopped playing the game, if you could even say I played it, but I put in the game so many years later, and then that's when I was like, I wonder if I could actually can I find anywhere on the screen set up for Black Hayato? I was like, oh shit, I did, right? Like that didn't take a lot of labbing to do, right? Like that wasn't that hard. That's one of those things that, God, if I had actually played the game, like with any remote seriousness when I was younger, I'm sure I would have come up with the idea for it. You know what I mean? But I will say to actually do the double black Hayato with rolling on, not anywhere on the screen black Hayato. With rolling on, that's not that bad, right? You know what I mean? I don't know why people can't do that. That doesn't make any sense to me. But with rolling on, and you see some people can't even do it with rolling off double black Hayato, which also is strange to me. But with rolling on double black Hayato, of course, that's one of the hardest things ever that I've ever done in a fighting game. It's ridiculously hard. With rolling on double black Hayato, absurdly fucking difficult. I mean, I showed before videos of me doing it, but oh my God, is it fucking hard. Like I know I tried to do, did I put that video? I think I maybe made the video. When I was trying to see, I wanted to go through everyone on the cast. Who can you do a legitimate double black Hayato on with rolling on, right? And it is so hard. I gave up. I gave up. I'm like, I don't play this game. But, anywhere on the screen, black Hayato with rolling on, that's not that bad. I don't know why people complain about that, but that would be an example of something, not a lot of lab time, just to see that the idea works, but execution, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Double black Hayato, extremely hard with rolling on. Bonkers. But yeah, so what's the hardest thing? Again, overall, believe it or not, I'm going to say Dragon Ball FighterZ. Just because the sheer amount of stuff, a lot of hard stuff. Tiger knee loops are very difficult. There's also quirky stuff that is very difficult in the game, or a lot of stuff used to be, right? But Marvel 3, again, a game that a lot of, I think, you could say this, if the community has had to lie about me to such a extreme degree, that the shit is hard, right? You don't see people still saying the King of Fighters stuff I did was fake, right? You don't see people still saying that, right? You know what I mean? People like Persona and I'm sure many others have long surpassed what I did in King of Fighters. You know what I mean at the time. But at the time I did it, it was very impressive, right? Mizuguchi, obviously, I don't think people lie about me doing the combos in Karna's Revenge. They try to lie that I beat them. Oh, you didn't beat me, it doesn't count. You know what I mean? But and Guilty Gear, obviously the Guilty Gear stuff is still, it's a lot of like hard stuff, but it just doesn't stick out to me as the hardest stuff in like fighting game history. Just a lot of hard stuff. CVS2 stuff, again, I got to give myself props for being able to come up with that stuff before I could even drive. That's crazy, right? But you still got to give credit to the Cyrec guys because they were the ones that originally posted the idea to keep Kim in his switch stance. I just made it work, so to speak. So I don't get full credit for that. But anyway, I don't know, again, at the end of the day, as I said before, you got to take into account not just executing the thing, which so many people cheat nowadays by macroing and all this other kind of stuff. You got to take into account actually finding the stuff, right? Again, nothing, other games I've talked about, again, Tekken vs. Street Fighter, nothing really sticks out to me that was that hard to do. Street Fighter 4, a little bit of stuff I did, nothing sticks out as that hard to do. Just Street Fighter 6, I mashed and I did a few combos. Nothing sticks out that hard to do. Soul Calibur, nothing sticks out as that hard to do, even though there's lots of just frame stuff in it. But they're kind of fake just frames, I feel like. Street Fighter 2, again, is an example of some stuff is just like a quirk to do if you don't remember it. Like, say, here's an example of Street Fighter 2. If somebody asked me to do, say, the chain combo to jump attacks, I probably wouldn't be able to do it anymore because it's been too long. Some stuff is just muscle memory. Even say stuff, I'm going to be honest, I don't remember anymore how you do a stand fierce into super and super turbo anymore. To be honest, even in real life, I only offhand remember hitting stand fierce into super turbo once in my entire life. You know, duck fierce, duck forward, super, not that bad. But I know that sounds weird. Maybe if you're a newer person watching this, try to do stand fierce into super with Ryu in super turbo. I wouldn't be able to do it anymore. I don't even ask me to, but low forward, duck fierce, but again, some stuff is just a trick, and I don't know. Long video, but hey, if you want to support me for 25 years of combo videos, all that kind of stuff, thank you. PayPal, Patreon, etc. Blah, 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 blah. The end.